Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Hello, and a very good evening to everyone present here. I am Vedant Pandey, webmaster at RAIT-ACM. Along with me, I have Rimi Roy, publicity chief at RAIT-ACM. We would like to welcome you all to day 3 of Ready to React, a 5-day live workshop organized by RAIT-ACM, where you will be taken through an amazing journey of JavaScript, the language that gives web pages interactive elements and makes everything even more attractive. We are glad to have you all, the learners, with us today. Whether you are a beginner or well versed with JavaScript, the workshop will surely benefit each and everyone. Even if you haven't got your heart set on a tech career, being proficient in JavaScript language will enable you to build websites from scratch, a pretty useful skill to have in today's world. Throughout the workshop, we will take you through an engaging step-by-step approach to understand the JavaScript code. We will also be providing certificates after the workshop. Participants, please feel free to ask your questions to the mentor. You can also post your queries in the text channel. All questions of every participant will be answered during the workshop by our mentor. We will be having a Q&A session at the end of the day.
Now, I would like to introduce you all to the speaker of the day. We have Mr. Haridarshan Chaudhary, who is a full-stack developer and has completed numerous internships on React. He is currently working as a product engineer intern at Tealfield. Mr. Haridarshan is also the winner of Prequel to Perfection organized by RAIT-ACM, and he will be briefing us about JavaScript. Before we proceed with the session, let's have a small recap of the topics we covered yesterday. How JavaScript works behind the scene. Context, hoisting, why undefined appears, scope, difference between where, let, execution of a program, function in JS, how to define a function, execution of a function, functional scope of where, first class nature of function. Over to you, sir. Haridarshan.
So let's have a quick recap, because like we wrapped our head around a lot of things yesterday, so we need a quick recap, right? So basically the recap is like we should know what terms we did study. For example, what is an execution context? So if you remember this image from the previous session, execution context is basically something JavaScript creates to do the execution of the program, and it has two phases, which one is called memory creation phase, one is called the code execution phase. And memory creation phase, it basically traverses the whole program and checks what variables or functions exist, and it's basically going to save all those stuff into the memory. And then it starts the execution, and based on the execution, the variables or the functions, the variables are updated, and whenever a function call is encountered, it creates a mini execution context inside the creator execution context. And then again, the memory creation phase and the code execution phase for that particular function happens. For that particular function happens, and then basically that the answer from that function is returned, and the control is returned to the parent program, and it executes further. And after the execution of the functions, basically all the execution contexts are destroyed. Okay, I hope that it was clear to you. So there are like few terms that I want you to remember, because these are also asked in interviews, so in JavaScript interviews. So one term is, what is hoisting? So hoisting is basically the memory creation phase. It's related with the memory creation phase. So if I want to explain what's hoisting, it's basically like collecting all the variables present, or like basically the memory creation phase. What it does is it checks what variables are present, and then it points that variable to undefined, and then after the execution those variables are updated. So this thing is called hoisting, that every variable is hoisted already, like before the execution of the program every variable or the functions are hoisted. So that's basically hoisting. And you might also now answer why undefined appears. So we already know why undefined appears, because during the memory creation phase, when we haven't executed our program yet, JavaScript creates the variables and points them to a special data type which is undefined, a special value which is undefined. Okay, so let's have an example of undefined. Okay, so I'll just create a variable, and that is p, and p is 5. Okay, so I'll just create a variable which is p, and p is 5. Can somebody confirm whether that there's a noise or something, like in the chat? Yes, no, whether there's noise, or are you able to hear my voice clearly? Can somebody confirm that? See, yes. So
Yes,
so
sir. There's a little noise, but your voice is clear, so you can continue.
okay, cool. So I declared a variable p and initialized it with 5. But if I console.log p here, what do you expect this to be? Like, what do you expect this to be? So, like, we just had a look what it would be, and if we go to the console, we see that it's undefined, and we know why this is undefined, and that's a great thing. Like, we do know why this is undefined. Now let's come to some more important and core topics. Okay, so I have demonstrated, like yesterday too, and even today I demonstrated these things with var. Okay, but we also have const and let, right? In case of const, we already know that like in case of const and let, we don't know much about them yet. We haven't yet looked to the difference of var, let, and const, but we will soon. So what if I use let instead of var? So if I say let p is equal to 6, let's say let p is equal to 6, and what happens if I do console.log of p? Oh, what do you expect here? What do you expect here? What do you expect here? You can just have your answers in the chat. Like, what do you expect here? Okay, console.log p with let. Uh, so guess this is the answer for, no, okay, it's the previous answer. So yeah, few people, I mean one person says undefined. Any more guesses? We can at least guess. Like, okay, undefined, okay. I get few undefined, but if you go to the console, it says that cannot access p before initialization. What? Like, what is this? When I was able, like when I was using var, it was possible, and then it's not possible. Why this is so? So let's check that whether this is stored onto the memory or not. Maybe then we can solve this problem, right? In case of var, we did had a look, like it was stored in the execution context and it was undefined. But let's see that whether we can do the same for let or not. So I'll just go here, go to sources. In the script tag, I'll just scroll down at this moment where it says error, and I refresh it. So there's an error. You see that if you check in the global, there won't be any P. Okay, but there's something else, right? We have something called script, and where we have p as undefined. So it's basically stored somewhere, but it's not in the global, because let and const are basically stored into the another space, which is script. Yeah, that we can notice here. But it does have undefined, right? So this should return undefined. But this is this concept is called temporal dead zone. You can note this down. Temporal dead zone. So what temporal dead zone means is like in case of let and const, you can't access those variables. You can't access those variables until they are initialized. So at line number 220, these variables are actually in temporal dead zone. Short for that is TDZ. So temporal dead zone. And as soon as you console.log p after initialization when using let and const, you'll notice that go to console. Okay, sorry, I had to comment it out because or else it won't complete the execution after line 220 because of an error. So I save this up. Now if I go there, I'll just remove the debugger. Go to console, refresh this up, and you'll say six. You'll see that there's 6. So what happens is that you can't access let and const variables before initialization because before initialization they are actually in temporal dead zone. This is a very important point. You should note it. These are also asked in interviews. Temporal dead zone. So if anybody asks you what is temporal dead zone and when a variable is in temporal dead zone, you can simply explain them that whenever we use let and const for whenever we use let and const for declaring a variable, we can't access those variables until they are initialized. In case of var, it returns undefined, but in case of let and const, it would give you an error because they are in temporal dead zone. Okay, so let's continue further. So now this like brings us to the first difference between var and let. So you might see that okay, it kind of indicates that let is strict than var. Let is more strict than var, and const is stricter than let. How this is strict? Because you can't. In case of let, you can skip this initialization part, and then this won't give you an error. This won't give you an error. But if you are using const, you have to like provide initialization statement. So hence const is strict than let, but not in terms of temporal dead zone. Const 2 follows the same rule as let with respect to the temporal dead zone, that you can't access it without initialization. And in case of const, you actually can't declare a const variable without initialization. So next difference is the scope of the variables. Okay, so scope is basically like at what would be the value, or whether I can access this variable, whether I can access this value stored in the variable at this part of the code or not. That's basically scope. So var, all the variables which are declared with var have functional scopes. So they have functional scopes. What is functional scopes? So let's say we declare a variable which is, I'll comment it out. I want to declare. So let's say we create a variable var p and say this is 5. Okay, cool. Now I create a function, and which is not double up, like some function. We learned how to create a function yesterday, and in this case I'm not passing any parameter. Okay, so that's fine. If we don't want, we don't specify a parameter. And now I declare p again. So var p is equal to like 5 or say 6. Okay, so var p is equal to 6. Now I return, let's say not var p, but let's say just p. Even that's fine because it's declared once. You can do var p, even that is possible. So let's first check with this, and then so now if I call this function, so what I do is I console .log, and in this I call this function. So you have to specify this parenthesis to call the function. So this is going to call this function. What it does, it creates something called p. It then has the 6, and it returns this p, okay, this p value. So what do you expect, whether this is going to return me 5 or whether this is going to return me 6? What do you expect this to be? You can have your guesses in the chat. Like, it's basically like var p is equal to 5, function some function p is equal to 6, and return p. So what is this going to return? Mistake, I just loaded it. So it returns 6, right? So if you actually go into the sources and place a debugger here and refresh this up, you will see that there are like, okay, let's place this here, and if we refresh this up, you'll see that in the local we have this return value. I want something after this execution, console.log. So I just wrote it because I have to place the debugger at line number 25. Okay, so what I do is I want to refresh it once. Now at line number 235, I place a debugger, and we have this thing, right? We have this thing called local, and the local we have this thing called p, and this p is 6. But if you check in the global, um, and if I go to p, there's a variable called p which is 5. So what happens is that we have a variable in global, and also we have a variable inside this function, which is basically the local scope of this function. So first, this statement var p, this actually declares a new variable. But if I remove this, first this p is going to search for this variable inside this local scope. So inside this local scope. And since it encounters a p which would be undefined at this till this moment, it would replace that with 6. But if there was no p here, let's say there was no p here, okay, and now if you try to execute this once again, you'll see that in the local there is no p, but if you go to the global, the bottom, okay, sorry, the execution of the function is not written. I'll just remove the debugger because we can see that in the console. Yes. So we have this p called as 5. So that thing was not stored. That thing was not stored in the local, but in the global, if we scroll down, we'll see that we have a p, and that is initialized with 5 because this statement was encountered before this function call. So it initialized this with p. So what it does is it kind of searches for p in its local scope, but there's no p in this local scope. Then it jumps out of this local scope, goes to its parent scope. So maybe you can have a function inside a function inside a function. So it would then jump out of its local scope, go to its parent scope, and check whether that variable, whether the variable of that name exists or not. If yes, then it's going to simply return that variable. So var have functional scopes. So like for every function, if you have, if you update the value of var, it would be, it would display the value of it would display the value of variable which is like closest to its local scope, which is in the local scope of that function. So for example, if I say this function, which is parent function, it also takes no parameters, and inside this we have this function, and this returns some function. Like it basically returns the result of some function, and I'll update this. Okay, update this with not some function but parent function. And here I'll say p is equal to 10, or let's say 20, and here I'll say p equals to 10. So in this case, like, let's see what this code is actually. So here we have console.log parent function, and we call the parent function. So what it will do is it will create a mini execution context for this function, and now we have the code here. And then again, inside that mini execution context, it would create mini execution for this, it would create a mini execution context for this complete function. And then when it encounters this return sum function, where we call this sum function, which is the inner function, it would create a mini execution context for this sum function, and accordingly it would be evaluated. So what happens is, like, let's say I run some function and this returns me some value, then that value will be returned using this statement and we get that value here. So let's say this returns 6. If this returns 6, then this would also return me 6. And hence here the value that I will get will be 6. Because this is going to return 6, then hence like execution of this would return 6. So this would like become 6 and this would return 6 again, and hence this complete execution of this function would evaluate to 6. So now we have to just check that what this would return in few scenarios. So as I told you that it has var has var has functional scope. So I have declared var p equals to 5. So what do you expect this to be? So you like for sure have just 3 options, which is 5, 20, and 10. What do you expect this to be? What do you expect this to be? You can have a look for a second, and then if it's difficult for you to understand, I'll just repeat what I said, and do let me know that too, or else you can just reply your answer in the chat. What would this line return? So this parent function is executed. This is going to execute these statements where it like makes p equals to 20, and then again we have this function, some function, and this function is executed at this return statement. So this would be executed, it would return some value p. I'll just remove this hello. I'll return this, it will return this value p, and here we will have that value of p, and that would be returned here, like because we called it here. So that would return here, and we'll get something consoled into a browser. So what do you expect this to be? People, okay, a lot of people say 10. Can you repeat once again? Okay, I'll just go through it once again. So what this is going to do is, I'm talking about this line, console.log parent function. So it is going to run parent function. Okay, so this is the parent function, right? So this is going to run parent function. And what parent function does is, inside the parent function, we define one more function, which is sum function. Okay, so it would like do the memory creation phase where it like updates the value of p, then it stores this function into the memory, and then it runs this function. So we define this function, define some function, and then we call this function, we call some function, and if we call a function, it is obviously going to return something, right? Because there's a return statement. If there's no return statement, then that is not going to return anything. But since here we have a return statement, it's going to return something, right? So that return statement, so when we call some function, it would return this p, whatever value of p is here, and that some function will return this value of p, and that here is also returned. So this would return a value p, so this would be replaced with p, and that would be returned, and we'll get a value here. I hope you understand this. It's a bit complex, but with practice, like, you can understand this very easy. So let's check the answer. A lot of people say 10. Okay, cool. I'll just remove the debugger. Press this, go to the console, and yes, it's 10, because this is first going to check whether we have 10 in local scope or not, and yes, we have, whether we have p in local scope or not, and we have p in local scope. What if I remove this? Then what is this going to return? Now this might be easy. What if I remove 10 here? I remove that 10. What is this going to return? Okay. What is this going to return? I removed 10. So what, according to you, is this going to return? So few people say 20. Okay. And that's right, because now again, since there is no p in local, it would come out of the scope. It would reach the parent, this parent function. It'll say, okay, we have p here, so this is going to return the value of p here, which is 20. If I remove this, what is this going to return now? What is this going to return now? Also remove the p, so what is this going to return? Okay, 3 people say 5. Are there any more guesses? 5, 5, okay. So yes, if you see the console, it would return 5. So I hope you understand what is a functional scope, and you understand the statement that var has functional scope. If you have any doubt, you can just post it in the chat anytime, and I'll just explain it. And I guess today we'll also have a Q&A for 10 minutes where you can ask all the doubts uh, regarding anything which is taught till now. So to understand the scopes of let and const, we need to understand what is block. Okay, what is block? So let's say we have this if condition, which we have seen like in the first session. So where I say 4 is less than 5. Okay, 4 is less than 5, and I save this. Okay, I save this. Unexpected end of input, or maybe we'll just have this curly brace. Okay, and we save this. So it at this moment it doesn't say anything. Okay, but what if I say that let's do console.log. For a fact, we know that, okay, if 4 is less than 5, and if we can, if this is true, this is going to return the statement, right? Return the statement. So this does return true. But we had to understand that what is block. So block is something written with curly braces. And what a block does is it's going to basically compile all those statements written in a block as a single statement. Okay, like more or less you will see that this is actually compiling as a single statement. For example, if I say console.log true here, console.log true here, and console.log something. So I wrote two statements here. Now previously if expected a single statement, but in the block I'm writing like two statements, and if we like check the console, it is going to return these two statements, like both of these statements, because of this block. So basically it is used to organize your code a bit, but at the same time what it does is it's going to compile all these statements written inside a block as a like something which is as a modular piece of code. Okay. Uh, okay. So I'm wondering that what happens if I do use strict with this. Okay. We haven't checked use strict for quite a lot of time, right? So okay, it does run fine here. So there's the unexpected end of input here, but that's sorted if we basically say that. So what this if basically expects here is a statement that can be executed if this is true. And we sometimes, like not sometimes, most of the times what we do, we provide a block instead of a statement, and it's something which is equivalent because it's going to compile all the piece of code inside it. Similar, it's going to compile the statements inside this as a single statement or something which is like wrapped inside a block meant to be a single statement. Okay, so those are basically blocks. So if I write these curly braces here, which are like this is legit code, valid code, no errors. We can have empty blocks for sure. I'll comment this out. We can have empty blocks for sure. I can have a lot of empty blocks. I can have a block inside a block and a block inside a block. So now what do I mean by let and const being block scoped? So for example, let p, not p, let v equals to 7. Okay, we'll say let v equals to 7, and here we say v equals to 8. Here we say v equals to 9, and finally we say v equals to 10. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to console log v everywhere. So I'll just make few copies of it. I'm going to console.log it everywhere. So so you might actually notice that we have this block inside a block inside a block. So kind of a structure. And then what we do, we console.log v, value of v everywhere. And let's say this is the innermost. Okay. And this is the outermost block. Not outermost, it's basically the program itself. This would be the second level from inside. Okay, second level from innermost, and this would be like the third level from innermost. Okay, so now I'll just save the code, and what do you expect these to be? Okay, so first, what do we mean by let and const being block scope? Okay, so for every block, let a variable defined with let and const will check whether that variable, whether a value for that variable exists, whether a value or whether a initialization or declaration for that variable in the local block exists. If yes, then it is going to return that value or basically print that value. If not, then that is going to look for its parent block. So here we might expect that something which is very much close is 10, right? So we might expect this to be 10, right? So what do you expect this to be? Like, what do you expect this to be? Console.log, the line number 254. What do you expect this to be? I just want to get like some answers. Okay, some people say 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, oh, 9. 9 for this, okay. 9 for this, so people say 9. I have few answers is 9, okay. So let's write 9 here, okay, which is for the second level from innermost. What would be console.log third level from innermost? We'll verify it just now. We are just going through the code and guessing the answers. What should this be? Console.log third level from innermost. What should this be? Okay, some answers are 8. And what should this be finally? Okay, 7. There's 1 7. Okay, few sevens. Cool. So now if we save this up, so what we expect in the console is something 10, 9, 8, 7, because JavaScript executes line by line, right? So we have 10, 10, 10, 10. Okay, it's a bit crazy for me to. Yeah, okay, cool. I got it. So why this 10, 10, 10, 10 is printed? Can anybody hint why this is happening? Why we have 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 in every place while we expected 10, 9, 8, 7? Okay, can anybody? First, we will check for local. First, v is equal to 10, second 9. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. You got it right. But why do we have 10, 10, 10? Can anybody like hint this? It's a bit easy if you have a closer look to the code. Like if you have a closer look to the code, it's actually interesting. So why is this having 10, 10, 10, 10? Why is this having 10, 10, 10? First, it will check for local. That's cool. First, it will access child 1. Okay, but that's cool. I told it is going to access 10, but why? What here? What here? What here? Okay, it's not going to go inside this block, right? So why this returns 10? V value is not changing after printing 10. Exactly. Well, that's kind of a right answer. V value is not changing after print 10. So the perfect answer would be that V is the same variable, right? What we do is we execute line number 245. We say it's 7. We execute line number 247. We replace it with 8. We execute 249, replace it with 9. We then execute line number 251. We replace it with 10. And after that, there's no changing. So because no new variables are created, this is the same variable which is accessed everywhere. So if I created new variables here, let's say let this. Now what you would expect, like I created new variables in every block. Now what you would expect, whether that would be 10, 10, 10 or 10, 9, 8, 7. It's actually great that we did something wrong so that we learned a bit more. Cool. So now people say 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, 2 people say 10, 9, 8, 7. Hemang Ranjan says 10, 10, 10, 10 again, which is okay, bit interesting. Cool. Any more answers here? So now if you go to the console, it is 10, 9, 8, 7. Because if you go to the sources, if you find it confusing, we'll just go to the sources. And I'll just place the debugger here at console.log of v, and then I'll refresh it. Okay, you'll see that there are a lot of blocks created. Okay, so this is script, which is something global, and where we have value v, which is 7. Then in the block we create we create one more variable and say it's 8. Then again we create one more variable, say it's 9, and again we create one more variable, say it's 9, say it's 10. Okay, so this v, which is printed everywhere, it's actually a new variable created in that block. Now what will happen if I like removed all the let? What we would see here, like what we would see now. So if I go to this and refresh it again, okay, now you'll see that there's no block created. There's just a script, which is a global, which basically is same for the complete file, and it has only one variable created because there are no new variables created. So even we traverse this block, there is no new variable created at any time. It's just updating the same variable again and again. So like if I place a debugger here, or let's say here, and then refresh this, you'll actually see that v is 8. Why v is 8? Because after line number 247, v became 8, and 249 is not yet executed. So 249 is not yet executed at line number 251. If I refresh this now, you will see that it's 9 because line number 251 is not yet executed. So it's actually changing the value of the same variable, but in another case where we have this let, at that time it's creating a new variable for every block. Okay, so I hope you understand that. So what happens now? So Actually, now this has become a bit tricky. This has become a bit tricky, and I'm so glad that we were wrong, so that we learned a bit more. Okay, now what do you expect? Okay, I know that this is going to be 10 for sure, but what would this be? What would this be? What would this be? So are there any guesses now? We know for sure this is going to be 10 for sure, but what would these three uh, values be? I'll just show you the code for a second and then you can maybe reply. So if we like use the same logic, then what would this be? What would this be? What would this be accordingly? 10 9 8 7, people say 10 10 8 7, 10 9 8 7, 10 9 8 7. Okay, so actually going with that logic, uh, we have v equals 9, right? And we update v equals 10, but this is not a new variable. We are updating this variable only. So once this is updated, there's no updation here. So this should like return 10 because this is going to access this variable, but this is already updated at 251, at line number 251. But in these cases, we have like new variables everywhere. So this would like return 8, this would return 7. So the right answer would be like 10 10 8 7. Let's check, maybe even I'm wrong, but I'll just remove the debugger and refresh this up, code console, and that's 10 10 8 7. Okay, so I hope you understand that. Now what if I remove let from here? What if I remove let from here? Okay, or let's not remove let from here. Let's remove let and also add a let here. Now what would be the answer? Now again, we know that this is going to be 10 for sure. What is this going to be? What is this going to be? And what is this going to be? Any guesses? First, let's check this. So according to our logic, what this is going to do, it's going to access the closest v, which is v, and that's v equals 9. Okay, so that's v equals 9. That's cool. Now here, it's going to access the closest v, and that is v equals 8, but this is a new variable, and that exact variable is updated here. So accordingly, this should be updated, and that would be 9. And finally, we have 7. So the answer should be like 10 9 9 7. And if we look at the console, that's 10 9 9 7. So I guess we took enough examples. So what goes for let, it's same for const. Just one thing, that whenever you declare a const variable, you also have to initialize it. So I hope you understand this. If there are any doubts, you can just put it in the chat. Okay, so I hope you also came to know about difference of var. Var is not block scope. Let's have a look to that example too. Okay, let's say we have var as p, not p. We have var as v is equal to 10. Okay, and here inside a block, I say var v, no, not var v, var v equals to 9. So now console dot log v here, and console dot log v here. What is this going to return? Actually, it has one Easter egg inside it, and that's also a drawback of var 2. So if you actually run this code, you'll see that it's going to return 9 9. But then why this is returning 9 9? Because here you are actually declaring a new variable. So if there was no block, let's consider that there was no block, and you had var v equals to 9 9, and if you console dot it would also return 9 9. So basically this is something which is a drawback of var, that you can also redeclare var again and again, whereas that would be like in the same scope, you can't redeclare var again and again. So let's say you have let p equals to 9 already, and you try to do let p equals to 10. Okay, which is basically creating this. So this would give you an error because P has already been declared. But in case of var, it is not giving you an error. So that is also a drawback of it. So basically, just like we can't come to know whether this is block scoped or not, but it is for a fact. But here what happens is we can actually come to know by this, because here var is being like redeclared, and if this block doesn't exist, then also this is redeclared, and this should not happen, and this won't happen in case of let and const. So that's a drawback of var 2. So you can note that if you want. Now let's come to the another topic. If you have any doubt, maybe, and if you have any problem with the pace or anything, you can just put it in the chat. I'll have a look. So now this is very important thing, which is first class nature of function. So till now what we learned is like whenever I want to declare a function, which is this function, let's say name. Okay, no, nothing. Function. Function. I created a function. Okay, so there's a function, a function. So we have learned that okay, we can create a function like this. But what if I try to store this, let's say t, into this function? Like I kind of want to store console.log. So what I basically did is I created a variable called t, and then initialized it with a function. Okay, function or function. So if I do console.log, if I do console.log of t here, and if I go to the console, you'll see that it actually prints the complete function. Why this prints the complete function? Because we know in the memory collection phase, what this basically does is that whenever this line is encountered, then t is replaced. T was previously undefined, but now it is replaced with function, and hence it stores the value, which is a complete function. Okay, now there is one difference. If you okay, one more thing. So now we just came to know, okay, I can store this in a variable, but what's the use? So by this method, you can also call t. So I'm not calling a function, but I'm also calling t. And if I save it, now it won't return function, but it would instead like return hello. And why this returns undefined? Because we have not like put up any return statement, hence this is going to return undefined. If I say return 8, then this would like return something called 8. But if I don't return anything, like if I skip this return statement, this is going to return undefined. Because if you see in the sources, we'll just have a look just now. So if you see in the sources, if I initialize it here and refresh this up, so it would create a scope for this, but there's like it hasn't stored the return value anyway. But if I had like something return 8 or something, return 8 or something, and then if I try to refresh, you like at this point, okay, I'll just cross it up. Okay, return value. What's the problem with this one? This should like eventually point me out to a return value, but it isn't. Okay, so anyways, whenever we like create this function, it is also going to store that return value, which it is going to return eventually. And this basically returns me the value 8, but if I skip this, then this is going to return me undefined. Now one more thing with this is like what if I skip this name? So let's say I just told that t is basically a function with console.log hello, and now if we see, it's going to like work fine. And these are called as anonymous functions. So what is an anonymous function? Basically a function without a name. Now what's a drawback with this is, let's say I created a function, value, not value function called another function. So let's say I created a value. Let's say I created a function called another function, and I console.log some value. So now, if I come here, I say console.log some function. Okay. Sorry, console.log another function. And if I say console.log t, what do you expect these values to be? You can guess that in the chat. You can guess that in the chat. What do you expect this value to be? What do you expect this value to be? And the answer would, like, you would get the right answer if you have a recap of this memory execution, this execution of program which we discussed in the previous session. So what do you expect this to be? Like, what do you expect another function to be, and what do you expect console.log t to be? Are they going to be same, or let's say this is also hello? So are they going to be same, or whether they will be different? So will they be more different? So okay. So what happens here is, like, if you actually see the result, there's a hello. I'll just comment this out because this is creating confusion. You'll see that there's some function logged here and there's one undefined. Now why this happens? Because t is not a function. T is basically a variable, and at this moment where at this moment at line number 273, we initialize t for the first time. So till this time, the value of t is just undefined, and now t has the value as function. So if I console.log t here, this would like return me function, but the line number 266 returns me undefined. But in case of this, as we have seen, like in the memory creation phase, the complete function is stored into the memory. So whenever I do console.log of a function, then that is going to return me the complete function. But in this case, that function is actually stored as a variable, stored inside a variable, or that variable is actually pointing to function. So if you wonder what would be the type of this, you can actually check it off. What would be type of t, and we have covered this in the first session where we had some non-primitive types, and function was one of the non-primitive types. So the type of t actually returns function because it is actually storing function here. So if I do console.log type of t here, then this would just say undefined at this moment with line number 267. Okay. So this property of functions is called the first class nature of function. So a function can be treated as a variable in JavaScript, and we also had a look like what is anonymous function. So as we already know that, let's say, okay, I won't define another function. I'll just take this function. So as we just saw that, okay, this can be a variable, or this can be stored as a variable, but we can also pass variables into another function, and that is similar to like variable. Like a variable can be passed as a parameter to other function. So since this function is stored into a variable, we can also pass it as a parameter. And here, let's say I call t. Okay, let's say I call t. Let's remove this console.log, and let's say this is going to return 5. This is going to return 5, and here I'll say return t. So what happens is that this t, which is this variable, which is actually this function, is passed as a parameter, and that function is also returned. So basically we are also taking a function as a parameter and at the same time returning that here. And when we are returning, we are actually calling it also. So if we have a look here, okay, we didn't print it anywhere. We are not calling another function anywhere, so that won't give us any result. So console.log, and if I call another function and I have to pass value t. Now this value, this can be anything. Let's say you say this is func, and then I call this function and pass t as a parameter. So this would like return 5 because it's calling this. But what if I returned func but without the parenthesis? Then this will basically t is going inside and t is returned. So you'll see that it's basically a function. So if that is a function, then hence var L, and if I do this another function where I pass t, so we have L and pass another function, and this is also going to return t. And if I call L here, what is this going to return? I'll also wrap a console.log here. I'll also wrap a console.log here. What is this going to return? So if we actually have a look, closer look, it would be like another function is called here and t is passed. So this function is called, we have this t here as a parameter, and then that whatever parameter we get, we are going to simply return that. So this is just going to return what goes inside, that is t. So this is going to just return us t. Okay, and then that t, like which is basically this function, is stored into L, and when we execute L, this is going to execute this function, and hence this would return us 5. And if we like miss the parenthesis, then this would return us the complete function. So it's important that you don't miss the parenthesis, or else it's completely a different thing. I hope you understand this. So these all properties are called as the first class nature of functions, and these are something that make JavaScript very strong language with respect to functional programming, because you can do a lot of stuff with functions, and we can basically pass a function as a parameter, return function from a function. Yeah, very similar to Inception. So, and then that function can again be stored into some variable, and that can be again called somewhere else. So that was all about function. And I guess like if you have any any doubts, you can ask it. Diff use case of anonymous function. Use case of anonymous. Okay, yeah, this is something that we will cover in tomorrow's session. There's a concept called higher order function. Okay, so like higher order functions, and there's a concept called higher order functions, and also there is something called as callbacks. Okay, so what they do is that I have some function which is going to do some task, let's say parent. Okay, and that's going to do some task, and what it does is it takes one more function inside it. It takes one more function inside it. So this actually becomes a higher order function, and this higher order function provides additional functionality to this. So maybe like you can assume it as a multiplier or something, as a multiplier or something. For example, let's say you create a parent function, and what this parent function returns is it's going to simply return another function. Okay, it's going to simply return another function, and what that function does is it's going to return a number into 2. Okay, we'll take number here. So now I'll just have something like var sum, and we say parent function, call it, and we have another function which is function. Well, there are a lot of function in this session, but we have a function which is double up. Okay, which basically takes a number and returns that number into 2, or else we don't really need it. Okay, anyways, we don't really need it. Well, This won't be an example for like why do we need anonymous function? Okay, you wanted the example for anonymous function. So basically this function here, which is anonymous function. So whenever I call this is going to return me a function, right? So sum here is a function. So if I do console.log sum, it would return me this function. And if I like pass some value which is 5, let's say 5, then this is going to return me 10. So we basically created a multiplier function. You can say multiplier function, multiplier by 2 function. So what that does is like whenever you pass like uh, you get this function multiplier by 2, which basically returns number into 2. Well, that can be done like very simply to do, but there are more use cases, especially we use them in callbacks to be very precise. And what are callbacks? For example, if you click on something and you want something to happen, so at that moment you can actually pass some functions which would like perform that change of UI or something for you. And a lot of time we pass those things as anonymous function because we don't really need a name for that. And there's also one more thing called arrow functions. This is something which we are going to cover tomorrow. This is tomorrow's portion. So other than that, if you have like any doubt, you can post it in the chat box. Diff. So okay, what's the difference between what? I guess like you are asking difference between something and okay, anyways. So if you have any doubt, you can just ask it. And uh, use case of anonymous function. Okay, I'll just stay tuned. Tomorrow's session we are going to cover higher order functions, and in higher order functions we are going to pass a lot of anonymous functions and stuff which is going to do some task for us. We will also learn about arrow functions. Just to like come up with some silly example here, I just demonstrated this, but this is obviously useless. Okay, so are there any questions? We were typing the answer for the question. Okay, sorry. Cool, thank you. So, okay, so now we come here with objects. Like we have heard this term object in the first session itself, but we don't know what an object is. So an object is basically like a data structure which can store a lot of things inside it. So how do you actually create an object? So there are two ways. Okay, basically one way is the object constructor. So this is var object is equal to new object, and if I console.log this object, you'll see that it has created an object, but it has nothing inside it. Okay. If you are wondering what is this prototype, like maybe we will cover it in the next session. But this is something like more advanced because JavaScript is also a prototype-based language, and we'll just check it out in later sessions. It's a bit more advanced stuff. So var object is equal to new object. So we created an object here, and this same thing can be achieved if we say like object2 and just like put in this curly braces. Okay, and if I do console.log object2, this would return me the same results. So this is basically like there's one way this, and there's also another way, which is this. Now we'll just stick to this one for now because this is a bit easier. So now I have created an object again, but this special part about objects, hence you can always modify them. They are not immediate, you can modify them. So for example, if you say like object, so like object can have like some properties. Okay, so let's say it has a property as name. Okay, that's John or something. Then it is having another property which is age, which is, let's say the age is 19, and in objects you need a separator. You need to like put comma after every property. And now if I console.log this object 2, you see that this is an object, but it also has few properties, which is name as John and age is 90. Okay. Now, what if I want to access only one property? You can use, there are two ways. The first is using the dot operator. So as you can see, my VS Code already suggests this. So object2 dot, you can write the property name. So object2 dot name will return me this object2 dot the name property of this object2. Okay, I'll save this script and okay, this is going to return me John. And if I replaced this with age, this is going to return me 19. Okay, so that's one part. And another way of doing this is you can have bracket notations, and in the bracket notations you can write in string what you want to access. For example, if I say I want to access object2 of name, then this would print me John. And if I want to say access age, then this would like print. So for this we will also like stick to the object notations because they are a bit easier to use. Now these objects are like these can be stored in variables, and basically everything in JavaScript can be passed as a parameter to object. Can be if it can be stored in a variable, then it can also be passed into a function. So, for example, let's create a function. So I guess like till this point you would have noticed that functions are something which are very much important in JavaScript because you can do very crazy stuff with function, which can also become complex and weird like at moments, but with practice maybe you can perfect it. So let's create a function which is uh, okay. What it does is basically takes an object, and what it is going to do is it's going to simply return a string. Okay, not a string. Let's say we have this display name function. This is going to return the name of this thing. So what I did is this object is being passed and it returns me object.name. So let's uncomment this object too because we will use it to pass into this function. And now I want to console.log display at object2. So what this function will do is take this object2 as a variable named object, and it is going to return me object.name. So if I go to my console, it is going to return me object.name, which here is John. And if I replace this with age, this will return me 19. Okay, so it's already 6:44. I guess we can stop right here. Like today's session was a bit crazy. It was also a bit difficult to wrap your head around, but these are something which you need to like. These are something which would help you to do more complex and crazy stuff in JavaScript. So if you have any doubts, you can just ask. We were trying. Okay. If you have any questions, you can ask, or else we'll start with the closing ceremony or whatever it is. Okay. So do you have any questions? So session was interesting, but also it was a bit confusing. I felt it that way. So maybe like with practice, we will see more examples and we'll understand it in more detail in coming sessions again. So sorry if something felt uh, confusing or if you didn't understand something. If you have a specific kind of doubt, then you can ask it just now. Uh, we'll cover more such. Yeah, I guess it will be more clear after watching the recording. Yeah, maybe it can help. Yes, you can say. Or else we will take a few examples. And this is the point where I would suggest all of you to like actually create a local version of this, like have a index.html file and have a script, and then try stuff on your own. Then maybe get confused, maybe get more confused, so that we can have a discussion on Discord, like why this thing is working, why this is not working. Because I have heard a famous quote that programming is something that would like make you feel genius at a moment and idiot at the next moment. So okay, you can just try some and maybe you will know more. Okay, you can continue with those closing thoughts and stuff.
Yeah, sure. Making life a masterpiece by learning. Imagine no limitations on what you can be, have, or do. On this note, we would like to conclude today's session by expressing our gratitude towards our expert for honoring us with his time and presence. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with all the valuable knowledge and information. I would like to express my gratitude to the principal of RAIT, Dr. Mukesh Padil, sir, and HOD of IT Department, Dr. Ashish Jadhav, sir. Our heartfelt thanks to all the participants for tuning in and keeping the session interactive. We hope you enjoyed today's session. Do follow us on Instagram to get updates regarding these and many more such workshops. Also, attempt the daily quiz that we upload on our Instagram stories. Do not forget to attempt the day 3 quiz. We'll put the link in the Discord text channel soon. For further updates, follow us on our social media handles. Link to the same has been put in the text channel too. And now, we have a small announcement for you all. I would like to invite Krishna Dahake, Tech Chief at RAIT-ACM. Over to you, Krishna.
Hello everyone. It is very great to see everyone is very excited in learning JavaScript, and the sessions are very interactive, so thanks for it. So in the day one, we have asked you one question, that is at the end of the quiz, we have taken one poll whether you want a workshop on React. So we got a very nice response to it, and you asked and we have brought. So we are organizing a workshop on React. For this, we have called one industry professional who has a very good teaching experience, and also he is working in very reputed company also. So we will be announcing the session or the workshop very soon. So stay tuned and follow us on our social media handles. Over to you, Rimi.
Yeah, thank you, Krishna. Let us all meet tomorrow for day 4 of Ready to React. Till then, keep learning, keep coding. Thank you so much.
Also guys, if you have any query while attending the quiz, then you can ask it anytime in our Discord channel. We are always open for the queries and doubts. Thank you.